Under the slogan of shaping our digital future, the Arab International Digital Cooperation and Development Forum, DCDF, will bring together representatives and experts from Arab governments, the business sector, civil society, the technical community, academia, and international organizations. DCDF will be held virtually from 13 to 23 December 2021 by ESCO, LAS, ITU, UNCTAD, and UNDESA. Through almost 30 sessions over 8 days, you can participate in policy debate on priority issues in the fields of internet policies and digital development globally and in the Arab region. DCDF aims to align the Arab tracks of the World Summit on the Information Society and the Internet Governance Forum to maximize opportunities for digital cooperation. Register now to join us in this journey from 13 to 23 December. Together, let's shape our digital future.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone that are following us from around the world. My name is Deniz Susar from the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, and I am very happy to be your moderator in this session. This is a special session of the Partnership on Measuring ICT for Development, Improving ICT Data Availability to Support Regional Development. As part of the Digital Cooperation and Development Forum. Please allow me to say a few things about the partnership. Partnership is an international multi-stakeholder initiative that was launched in 2004 to improve the availability and quality of ICT data and indicators, particularly in developing countries. The initiative was a direct response to the request made by the World Summit on the Information Society VISIS to produce official statistics to monitor the information society. Throughout the years, the partnership has guided policymakers in producing ICT statistics that are crucial to informed decision-making, including through the identification of a core list of ICT indicators, which was last updated in 2017. Here in this session, we have speakers from ITU, UNCTAD, UNESCO, and also a country presentation from the United Arab Emirates. So we will hear latest progress in the partnership's work on measuring ICT for development, future plans, and discuss how we can all improve the availability of ICT indicators. Let me also mention that partnership presented its report to the Statistical Commission to be discussed in 53rd session from 1-4 March 2022 here in New York. In that report, we have provided latest trends and updates from different regions. And also we provided a suggestion to improve the ICT, core ICT indicators that was last updated in 2017, as I mentioned earlier. And as in that new indicators, we will hear from ITU recently. But I just want to mention that as UNDESA, we are producing e-government survey every other year. And as ICT in government indicators, we also proposed presence of national e-government strategy or equivalent, presence of digital ID or similar authentication required to access online services, and presence of a public procurement portal in the report to Statistical Commission. So I wanted to put this out there on the table so those people who are watching us now or who will watch later are aware of it. And before I give the floor to ITU, Mr. Martin Schepper, I just want to remind everyone that this session is being recorded. You can also follow us on YouTube, and also there is interpretation available for Arabic, French, and English. So Martin, I believe you have a presentation. Please share your screen, and you have around 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, Denise, and good afternoon to everyone. Indeed, I have a presentation and I'm putting it up now. And it's at the end rather than at the beginning, so I'll move it to the beginning. So good afternoon again, and welcome from Geneva, where I'm based at the ITU. I'm going to talk for 10 to 15 minutes about measuring the information society, but from the perspective of ITU, the items that we cover within the partnership, looking at data gaps for the region, and also spend some time on new data sources. So at ITU, we do, in the statistics division, we do a number of things, like every statistical division, we work on data collection and data dissemination. We analyze the data that we collect and bring out research reports. We work on definitions and standards through manuals and our expert groups. We do technical assistance and capacity building, and we work together at the international level with many other organizations, such as through the partnership on Measuring ICT for Development. So on this slide, you see a number of our outputs on the methodological side, but also on the research side and the database that we have. So in the middle, you see ICT facts and figures that came out just a few weeks ago. I want to show you 2 or 3 slides from that publication, just to give a few highlights of our work. So one is the percentage of individuals using the internet. That is maybe our headline indicator, which has increased to 63% worldwide. And on this slide, you can see the distribution among the various regions. So the Arab states, the ITU definition of Arab states, it's 66%, slightly above the global average. And you can see what it is in the other region. Another indicator that we track is the percentage of the population that is covered by a mobile network. So it's not people using mobile networks, but people that have access to a mobile network. So if they want, they can go on the internet. And we can see that in the Arab states, 70% of the population has access to a 4G network, and an additional 25% only have 3G networks. So in total, if you add those 2 up, 95% of the population in the Arab states can access mobile broadband if they want to. And you can see also the percentages in the other regions. So you can see that 4G rollout is a little bit behind most other regions, but the overall broadband coverage is absolutely fine. Another area is affordability and prices. And I think most people have heard of the Broadband Commission for Sustainable Development's target that says that broadband should be affordable, should be costing less than 2% of GNI per capita by 2025. So we're tracking if that is the case. And we can see that for the Arab states, when it concerns fixed broadband access, the median is 3.1%. So this is above the affordability target. For mobile broadband, it's 1%. So that is absolutely fine and affordable, and it's among the cheapest in the world. So people that want to use the internet, in most cases, it's possible within reasonable budget limits to do so. So these are just a few of the highlights of the indicators that we collect. So what data do we collect? We collect official statistics from all our member states and even non-member states. And we collect 2 types of statistics. On the one hand, we collect what we call supply side data. So that is data that comes from telecom operators, and it's generally collected in countries by the regulator, sometimes by the Ministry for ICTs. And that is data such as the number of subscriptions to fixed telephone, mobile telephone, broadband, bandwidth, revenue and investment, etc. So that's the supply side data. Then in addition, we collect data on ICT prices. That's a separate data collection that we collect in 2 ways. We collect it directly from the same regulators or ministries. And in addition, we do our own desk research to make sure that we all have the correct information. So that's the supply of ICTs. On the demand side, which is what we call what people do with ICTs. So households that have access to ICTs and individuals that use ICTs. And then you have indicators such as the percentage of people using the internet, the percentage of households with access to the internet, the activities that people do on the internet, the skills that people report they have to use the internet. This kind of questions, this kind of indicators, basically the only way to really find out is by asking people. So they need surveys, and surveys are generally done by national statistical offices in countries. So that is where we get the data from in most cases. So we collect those indicators twice per year. On the supply side, we have what we call the WTI data collection, the telecom indicators data collection. We have 2 data collections per year. In January, we have the short questionnaire where we only collect the core indicators. And then in September, we sent out the long questionnaire where we collect many indicators. The same in what we call the household indicators. So this is the household access and individual use, the demand side indicators. There as well, in January, we sent out a questionnaire where we only collect a few core indicators. And then in September, we sent out a questionnaire where we collect many more indicators, but also many more breakdowns. Then the price data collection is a bit separate, it's a bit different, as I said. It's in March that we send it to the regulators, and then during April, May, we also do our own research with the help of consultants. These data, we collect them, we process them, we go back to the countries to ask for clarifications on the data in case we have doubts. And then we publish them in the database, and the database gets updated twice per year in July after the short questionnaires have been processed, and in December, January after we've processed the long questionnaires. So more information on the questionnaires, it's on the link here. And if you search for ITU database, you can also find how we publish the data. A special notice I would make about the SDG indicators, because they are, of course, very important. In the SDG indicator framework, there are 7 indicators that are directly ICT related. 2 of them are collected by UNESCO, which is on the proportion of schools with access to the internet and access to computers. And then the other 5 are collected by us, by ITU. 3 of them are from the demand side. So that's the proportion of individuals with ICT skills, the proportion of individuals owning a mobile phone, and the proportion of individuals using the internet. And 2 indicators are from the supply side, which is the percentage of the population covered by a mobile network and fixed internet broadband subscriptions. So those are especially important. Now, what do we have in this region, and now looking specifically at the ESCWA region, so the 20 ESCWA countries. So if you look at the percentage of countries providing the core WTI data, so the core supply side data, we can see that it's pretty good. That between 75 and 85% of the countries, so between 15 and 17 out of the 20 countries, supply us with the data. The bars in red are the SDG indicators, so they are even more important. So if you want to know which countries supply data the best, we have another slide here that you can look at per country how the data submissions are. I'm not going to name all of them, but the core indicators, so the dark blue, is the one that we collect in the short questionnaire. And we can see that we get almost all data from almost all countries. So that's very good. And then the long questionnaire, where we collect many more indicators, we can see that varies a little bit between countries, from very good, from almost everything to not a lot. And then on the bottom, we have a few countries where we don't get any data at all. So that's the supply side. Now on the demand side, the picture is a little bit different because, as I mentioned, on the demand side, we rely on surveys, and surveys are done by national statistical offices. Now, regulators that collect the supply side data, they are generally well funded in countries, and they even receive funding from the operators, and the operators are often even obliged to send the statistics to the regulators. So they have well-functioning statistical systems. National statistical offices in many countries are underfunded, and ICT surveys are not always high on the priority list. So in many countries, there's just not enough budget to do those surveys. So we can see on the left side the countries that have done at least one survey in the last 3 years, and in many of those actually they're doing annual surveys. And on the right-hand side, we see the countries where the NSOs just don't have the funding to do the surveys. Special mention here for Iraq that actually did send us the data, but we are having some issues with the data that we're trying to sort out. So we can see it's here a bit more mixed, that there's more gaps on the household side than on the supply side. So what can we do to address this situation? Well, we cannot address the funding issue, and that is, I think, the main issue, at least certainly for the demand side data. We are not a funding agency, so there are models now in some countries where the regulators actually giving money to the NSO to conduct surveys on their behalf. So that's a model that is gaining traction, and that is very useful. We have two handbooks, or we have a handbook on the supply side, the handbook for the collection of administrative data, and we have a manual on the demand side. The handbook has been converted in an online training course that you can find for free on the ITU Academy. The manual, we're working on it, and next year we will also bring out an online training course on that one. So the last 3 minutes I want to spend about new work we're doing, looking at different data sources, alternative data sources, or big data. This is a complement to the existing data in many cases, and in some cases it can actually replace existing data. When we talk about big data, we can in particular think about mobile phone records. So everything you do with your mobile phone sends out a signal to a cell tower, and everything is tracked, not what you do directly, but if you aggregate all that money, you can get the information about how many phones, how many people were using the internet. It can be used for migration, tourism statistics. So on our side of the fence, we've been working, we've done a pilot in between 2016 and 2018, where the UAE was one of the pilot countries looking at mobile phone records. A second pilot was being held last year and this year with Brazil and Indonesia, where we looked in particular at 2 of the SDG indicators. We also have a separate project that we've done this year, which is a bit different, not looking at mobile phone records, but seeing at alternative data sources to measure the amount of people online and offline around schools. Looking at data from Open Cell ID, World Population Database, Facebook data, and trying to combine all those data sources and building up a picture of the online and offline population around schools, because it's linked to our GIGA project that is aiming together with UNICEF to connect all the schools to the internet. There will be a session in Expo 2020 at the end of January where the mobile phone records are being discussed. We're also bringing out the handbook next year, and we already have a version of it online at the UNSD website. A handbook on the use of mobile phone big data. You can see the table of content here. It includes experiences, examples from country pilots, sorry. And this also will be converted in an online training course that will come up in the course of 2022. So with that, because I'm over time, I will end here, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Martin. This was, I think, very interesting, and also it's a good background for our discussion today. I just want to ask participants if there is any dying question for Martin. This can also come from panelists. Maybe we can spend only 1 or 2 minutes if there is any question. I'm looking at chat, and I also invite everyone to put question in the Q&A. Let me just count to 5 if there is anything. Scarlett, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Dennis. I just have a question on the difference, because this is something I'll touch upon when you give me a chance to speak. If you have any insights at ITU at what are the needs for countries, how can we help them overcome this inability to reply to survey, to conduct survey-based data collection, if you think that there is something that the partnership can do, and how could we, or if countries have expressed needs that you think we might be able to tackle in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scarlett. I also see Rami wants to make a quick comment.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Martin, for this informative presentation. I'm mostly aware of most of what the ITU has been doing, but what was new to me concerning the new updated manual for the household survey is that you mentioned it was converted to an online course. This is very good for us because we worked on capacity building with member countries a long time ago, and having this course could really assist us, without us going there physically, but will assist the region. So I was wondering if this course is available only in English at this time, or if it will be available in other languages, specifically Arabic for our region.
Thank you. Thank you, Rami. And Martin, I have a quick question as well. You said that connectivity in Arab states 66%, but later you said population coverage by mobile network total 95%. So this may confuse some of the viewers. So if you can also clarify that, because isn't it connectivity come to 95%? So you have 3 quick questions, Martin, if you could respond before we move to Scarlett.
Yes, thank you all for these questions. And thank you, Denise, for, I will start with your question. Thank you for pointing that out, because I actually, when I was going over the presentation, I wanted to say exactly that, but I went too fast. So this is actually a great way to show that it's not only an infrastructural issue, because often people think people are not using the internet because they don't have, because there is no internet. There is internet, but people are not using it. So we have a coverage gap and we have a usage gap. The coverage gap in this case is 5% of the people that would even if they wanted to connect to the internet, they couldn't because there is no signal at all. But only 66% are using it. So there's an additional 30% of the population that could use it if they wanted to, if they would take the trouble of getting a subscription, having a device, and connecting to the internet and starting to use it. So there are multiple divides, and if you go to facts and figures, we can look at all the divides in terms of urban, rural, in terms of gender, in terms of age. And there are a number of barriers that have to do with affordability, but also with skills, with perceived need, with language in content in local languages. So people don't see the need to go on the internet. They don't know what the internet is. They don't have the skills, or they don't have the money. A number of barriers that prevents them from going all the way up to the 95 that could use the internet. On the capacity building question, Scarlett, your question, it has a number of answers. One answer is what I mentioned in my talk as well, is that basically they're underfunded, so there's no funding to do surveys. Surveys are very expensive. We know that, and it goes into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not something that, you know, if you have a spare 20,000 lying around, you can do a survey. It also takes a lot of time. So it takes a lot of resources in terms of time, money, but also in terms of the skills, and that's also lacking in many NSOs in developing countries, especially. That they, even if they would do a survey, they would struggle in knowing what to ask, in how to process the data. And that's where our manual comes into play as well, because it gives answers to all those questions. So that can really help. And that's where we can help as well. We can help by giving courses, training courses to countries that want to do a survey. And once it is online, because it's not online yet, unfortunately, it should have been online, but we've run into a number of delays. So the training course on supply side indicators on the handbook is online, but on the survey-based demand side indicators, it's not online yet. We're hoping that it will go online in the next 6 months. We're looking to see what we can do with languages. We're thinking about ways of maybe at least making sure that the slides get translated, so that when this the presenter is presenting, he may be talking in English, but the slides will be shown in another language. And then we're also thinking about captioning, so that we can subtitle that. So that is, we were looking also at the budget implications, the time implications, technical implications, but we are looking into that, because we know that this is very important. We will not as far as doing the whole course with an Arab speaker or a French speaker, or, you know, a Spanish speaker, because we have to do then 5 different versions, and that becomes very, very expensive. But something with subtitles, captioning, and showing different set of slides in the other language, that's what we are considering at the moment. I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. And I think if there is anyone interested in helping you with the translation, you should be. I guess you will be open to that, so you can people can put in the chat. And I also encourage again attendees to type some questions while we move forward, and so that participants can respond to you directly, and this session could be a bit more interactive. With that, I would like to move to Scarlett. Scarlett is from UNCTAD, Economic Affairs Officer, and we will hear more about, I guess, e-commerce indicators and digital economy.
Thank you very much, Denise. Actually, I won't speak a lot about e-commerce and digital economy indicators, but I'm also going to have 2, and not only because of time, but also because there are limits to what is available out there, and I'll get into that. I am going to bring up a couple of points with 2 hats. One, as current member of the steering committee of the Partnership on Measuring ICT for Development, and then my other hat as UNCTAD by itself, the UN Conference on Trade and Development. So first of all, I wanted to address on behalf of the Partnership Steering Committee, the issue that keeps coming up and that we mentioned in the agenda of the impact that COVID-19 has had in the past 2 years in terms of the availability of ICT statistics and the ability of countries to collect data, relevant data. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has clearly affected the ability of countries to conduct survey-based data collection and has delayed statistical production overall. This can be seen in the numbers that Martin just shared now on the limited number of countries that are able to respond to the questions that rely on survey-based data collection. But this overall impact of the pandemic on statistical production at the same time has forced us to look elsewhere for sources of data. And also the pandemic has increased the sense of urgency to produce more and better ICT statistics not only to monitor what has been going on, but to look at recovery policies and how can countries best use ICT in post-pandemic recovery, both on the side of social use of ICT, the use by the population of ICT, but also on the business side. The pandemic has highlighted the limitations of these traditional sources of data for ICT statistics. And I believe ITU can also explain a little bit more the very interesting recent work that they have done in terms of finding ways to access alternative data sources such as administrative data and big data. And some of the members of the partnership have also looked at data sharing schemes with the private sector that have been very innovative in the way that countries are able to produce official statistics or statistics that are mainly produced by the private sector, but have been validated by the national statistical offices. And that have a shorter timeline in terms of statistical production. Capacity building on the production of ICT statistics for national statistical offices continues to be a priority and for partners, and will require the support of development partners and international organizations in general, including through us as partnership. The UN Statistical Commission is the body of all national, that groups all the national statistical offices to which the partnership reports every 2 years. And I would just like to highlight that we are going to be offering a report, presenting the report of progress in ICT statistics at the next UN Statistical Commission that will take place in March 2022. And one of the things that we are including in this report is recent developments in our core list of ICT indicators. That core list is referred to in the ITU manual that Martin mentioned, also in an UNCTAD manual that I will talk about shortly. And you will also find there e-government indicators such as not all of the ones that are collected by UNDESA, but some of them are in relation. The main purpose of that list is to help countries that collect or are planning to collect ICT statistics to produce high quality and internationally comparable indicators. So the 2021 version of this core list will also be made available soon by the partnership. There is a partnership website that we have shared at the very beginning of this session in the chat that countries and other stakeholders can visit and look at the different resource materials that partners have produced, including the manuals that we have mentioned. And I would now like to take off that hat and put on the UNCTAD hat and talk to you about what UNCTAD is responsible for within the partnership, which is collecting and disseminating the core indicators on ICT use by businesses, on the ICT sector, and on international trade in ICT goods, ICT services, and digitally delivered services. So we have an UNCTAD working group on measuring e-commerce and the digital economy that met this year in May 2021 to discuss progress in the work of both our work, but other international organizations that many of the countries that belong to ESCWA are keen on following. Egypt is one of the countries that takes part, for example, in the OECD Working Party on measuring the digital economy. We also discussed capacity building at our working group, and in the last meeting, we discussed more in detail the ITU work on non-survey sources of data to measure e-commerce and the digital economy. The next meeting of the working group is planned for autumn of 2022. So I would like to encourage Arab countries to participate if possible, and probably an announcement of the exact dates and registration will be made available in the first half of 2022 in the UNCTAD webpage. Now, in support of future capacity building, UNCTAD published recently the revised version of its manual for the production of statistics on the digital economy. And the manual is very similar to the one that ITU produced, except that it focuses on the indicators that can be collected through business surveys, on digital economy statistics, and it has a focus for developing countries. So we recognize that developing countries have limitations in terms of resources that developed countries might not face. So it provides guidance in terms of how to best produce the core indicators within these limitations. And the manual not only contains the core list or refers to the core list of business indicators, it also contains proposals for the development of future indicators, and in particular e-commerce, indicators on e-commerce, and includes country cases, model questions and questionnaires, and training based on the manual has been developed. Unfortunately, the face-to-face version of this training is not possible for the time being, but an online training is being developed as well, and we hope to make it available next year. So far, the pilot training is in English, but I am foreseeing a possible question from Rami in this sense. We hope to make both the manual, first the manual available in Arabic, and eventually to hold the capacity building courses in the other official UN languages, including Arabic. But we don't have a timeline for that right now. In addition to the UNCTAD work on the digital economy statistics, I would like to just note that we have a partner, OECD, that in 2020 co-published with the WTO and the IMF a handbook on measuring digital trade, which is extremely interesting. The handbook is a living document, and it was created with the inputs not only from the international organizations, but also of national statistical offices and central banks. And it's designed to be updated on a continuous basis. And as a partnership, and UNCTAD in particular, that's interested in the economic aspects of ICT statistics, we are open to inputs from countries or to expressions of interest from countries, including in the Arab region, to participate in this work. So that's it for me now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Scarlett. And also thank you for answering potential future questions. I think that's very helpful, but I am hoping you will get more questions. And I forgot to mention that UNCTAD is the chair of the steering committee, and Scarlett has different hats. She's guiding us in the steering committee as well as her other work. So let's pause for 2-3 minutes for any questions to Scarlett. I kind of saw Hatem's hand earlier. I don't know, Hatem, if you had a question, but I see Rami's hand. His question is not answered yet. Yeah, Rami.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Scarlett. The question is not about the Arabic version, but it's just a comment first concerning the work of the partnership, and I'm glad that we're joined by UNCTAD and ITU. I mean, okay, they are the most that produce manuals or has been producing manuals for the partnership. you know, I've been following on that for the past, you know, 10 years almost, and I know my way around. I know the history. I know what got updated in 2008, 2010, the 2017 version. There was, you know, but for someone, you know, in member countries, someone joining their national statistical offices, etc., they might get lost and confused by, you know, the number of updates that were done and were not incorporated into the manual related to it. So it's always good if we can, I don't know, it's just a wish, try to make more frequent updates so that any manual you have has the latest version, has everything. It's, you know, sometimes you get confused when you have a manual and then you have an annex, you have to go to a different website to download the latest version and then to try to incorporate it into the different tables, etc. So just a comment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Scarlett, if there's another question, I'll get that and then give the floor to you.
Okay.
Martin is raising his hand, and as well as Hatem. Yeah. Please, Martin, first.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to ask you the same question you asked me. Before doing that, I wanted to add to my previous answer that our manual and our handbook are actually translated in all the languages. So the base material is already translated. So that is to answer back. And for Scarlett, once you have your online course, it may be an idea to also have it put on the ITU Academy. I don't know if that's possible or how that's possible, but it may be a good idea to have them together if we can do that. So did you like my answer to your question about what are the problems in especially developing countries in doing surveys? Do you find do you find it the same? Do you have the same answer to that question? What are the main impediments for countries to do surveys, and what can we do about it? Can we do something about it?
Okay, thank you, Martin. And Hatem?
I did have a question for Martin, and now the same question I will merge it to a question for both Martin and Scarlett. Everyone is calling for, we do understand now the amount of pressure in statistics office regarding surveys, but the question everyone is asking for the alternative emerging data sources. Even the UN have its program for big data project and data science. So the question here for Martin first, the first pilot for using big data for developing ICT indicators in the 2017 to 2019 was really a brilliant and very supportive experience for especially for UAE digital transformation program. And now why we did not go more for more pilot, how we can be a part of this and encouraging it, and most important, with all the demand into the indicator and the use of emerging data sources, how this can be embedded into the statistical body of ICT indicators. Is there is a chance one day that we can have a methodology, adapted, acceptable methodology, to use this new pilot and new data sources to be acceptable by the ITU for measuring the ICT indicator? That's the first question. Scarlett, now the digital economy, really, we as part of the National Statistical Office in UAE, and even we have a minister with part of his name is digital economy. We receive a lot of demand in data, and it's not an easy job. You know how much difficult is it. So when we will see leading pilot project from UNICTAD or from any organization to help organization or National Statistics Office start building capacity and building methodology for measuring one of the most attractive topics now in UAE, at least, digital economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Hatem. What I suggest is Martin thinks about his answer to Hatem's question. We will come back to Martin later, I promise. But Scarlett, maybe you can respond now briefly before we move to UNESCO.
Yes, of course. So first, replying to the comment from Rami, I really appreciate it because it's something, it took us 10 years to do a revision of our manual. And we kept telling ourselves already from year 3, after we had published it in 2009, we have to update it, and for many reasons that I'm not going to go into, but including problems in resources and logistics, we never got around to it until 10 years later, and it was sorely needed. So we are very interested in the example, the model that OECD has given now with its version of a living document for the handbook on measuring digital trade that I just mentioned. And actually, I will share a link in the chat for those that might be interested in looking at that. And what the decision they took is to make this a living document so that it can be updated relatively quickly whenever there's a need. Countries go to a single place to look for it. On the other hand, there is no physical document. So there is a trade-off in terms of spending money on printing a document that can be used in a library as a reference, and having this living document. In this case, I think it's justified to say that a living document is probably the most efficient way, because the digital world is a fast-changing one, and we barely keep up with changes. So definitely this idea of the living document that is being used now by OECD is something that interests us. And it's quite possible that the next version of the manual will probably be a living document version of that. And thank you for raising it, because this gives me arguments to bring back to our people and say there is interest in something that is updated quicker than what we do normally. So and thank you for the offer, Martin, about putting the online the online course in the ITU Online Academy. I'll bring that back to our team and see what are the possibilities there. The question from Hatem on when can you expect something from UNCTAD in terms of having an agreed upon methodology to use alternative data sources to measure the digital economy. I can't give you an answer on when. I can tell you that we've been looking at it for some time, but the first step before we actually go on to the methodology is to agree among ourselves on how we are measuring it, and how are we defining, even in terms of a statistical definition of digital economy and digital trade. We're still not fully agreed on that. The handbook that I just mentioned, that's a living document, was the first step in towards that, to agree on what can we call, for statistical purposes, the digital economy. And hopefully, yes, this is continuous work, and we'll be able to propose something for developing countries on how to use alternative data sources to measure digital economy, but we're still working on the basic concepts of it. I would just like to say that another dimension that has popped up in the past 2 years for measuring the digital economy is how to tackle the issue of data flows. And that is the big questions about that we have put forth in our last digital economy report that came out in September. And I'll also share a link to that. And the report looks at what data is data and can be reproduced. When do you actually assign a value to data, and how can you measure it, and who is it attributed to? And those are all big questions that we need to agree on before we can actually propose a methodology to countries. But yes, I'm glad again that you raise it, because I can bring that back to UNCTAD and say there is interest in this.
Thank you, Scarlett. Thank you. Let's stop here. I know there's a question for Martin, but I would like to move to Rami. Rami, I think we will hear more from you about the problems and issues in the region. As you mentioned, you have years of experience there. So please take the floor and guide us how we can help you.
Sure. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Scarlett. Well, this contribution will examine our experience in measurement in the past 10 years, ICT measurement, information society measurement, and we would like to provide a blueprint for the way forward. Our aim now focuses on gauging the national level progress of our member states, and this is much needed for a decade of action, which is only 9 years away from 2030. So the intervention is not geared towards shortcomings of any model or previous models. But we're just providing some evidence from countries whereby these models weren't well adopted or received for several reasons. And this defeats the very purpose of having a measurement model, which is to help country assess, where they stand, etc. First, let me just say that our region, economically speaking, and when I say the Arab region now for ESCWA, as Martin showed in his presentation, has 20 Arab countries. By the way, just half an hour ago, outside of the premises of ESCWA, there was a flag-raising ceremony because Algeria and Somalia were admitted to ESCWA only last year, but due to COVID, this event was postponed. So I'm trying to say that the ESCWA region is growing. Our aim is to have all 22 Arab countries part of ESCWA. So perhaps very soon we will be aligned. When we say the Arab region, we don't have to say the ESCWA region anymore because it'll be the whole Arab region. So this region consists of mainly 3 income groups, let's say high income groups, mid or middle level income, and low level income, which pretty much maps to 3 different ICT development levels. And you can guess that a high income group would map to a high development level of ICT, with few exceptions. And for the past 10 years, although we have made a lot of progress, most countries remained in the same development level, but they went up and down, but it's the same development level and they kept the same relative position to each other's, exception some few cases. And this brings me to the issue that I would like to highlight about the issue of ranking. Now, we know that ranking, for the purpose of global comparability, it's indicative and could be useful, but it had some negative effect, or ushered it ushered a race sometimes just to get a better position. And this is, I'm talking about our region. So I remember once we were in a country doing a capacity building workshop that was inaugurated by the ICT minister. So on the side of this capacity building, we were called to a meeting with the minister, whereby the minister wanted us to help them understand how the IDI worked. And he wanted to see, or she was a minister, how to improve their international ranking. So they wanted, this prompted me to prepare some kind of a simulation or an IDI calculator, which didn't exist, to show which priority areas, if they addressed or if improved in it, and by how much, could lead to the biggest hike in the ranking. And they were obsessed with that because it was linked to some investment funds and from potential donors that they promised they will get if they improve in ranking. So for that purpose, going forward in our region, we will stay away from producing any index or ranks for our region. I'm not talking about it globally. And we would resort to maybe a maturity level model, maturity model with different levels. Now, the second issue is we have to capture progress made over time. I'm talking about our region also. We had a lot of countries that came to us, complained that especially these countries were in mid to low level ICT development, that they said, no matter what we do, no matter the progress that we achieve, we feel we're not moving. Now, of course, they're doing progress, but probably their progress was at a slower pace than other countries. And that's why they felt they're still in the same place. So their progress or evolution over time have or ought to be captured somehow. And what we are proposing in our model is to factor that in, factor measuring progress over time for some key indicators. Another point I would like to raise is, it was raised here before, is the need for new indicators and new data sources. I'm not gonna go over the same things that we mentioned, but I would like to just give one small example that first, from 2010 to 2020, we saw in the region a good increase of almost over 60% in the number of countries undertaking some form of ICT survey, whether it's a dedicated ICT survey or a survey or a part of an ICT survey included in another survey. But their frequency remained very low. I'm not talking about all countries, but we saw that with Martin for some countries. And for that reason, definitely we need new data sources. We need them quickly. We need to maybe proxy indicators for specific areas. And let me just give another example. Like the past 2 years, we've seen that remote working is here to stay. Having a good digital infrastructure and equality, digital inclusion, it contributed to the economic and social resilience of countries during the pandemic. This is just one example where new indicators should be added to capture maybe the remote working readiness. This is something I'm proposing. Final point here about equitable access. Let me just revisit it quickly. One of the main key indicators or key dimensions for equitable access are affordability, and this is captured by the ICT price basket, etc., and the barriers to ICT access and use. We would like to focus on the barriers of access and use and give it the same weight as something else, as the affordability. For instance, if we have 100% of mobile phone penetration, it sounds very good, but it's not good enough if access to some internet content is censored, or if some tools like messaging, voice over IP are blocked. Now, you might argue, well, this is not important, but also the COVID, the time that we're living in, for instance, in 2020, WhatsApp has seen a 40% increase in usage due to COVID. It was used as a communication tool by WHO itself in every country. You can now, there's a number, if you send a message to that number from anywhere in the world, it detects your number yourself and it sends you information about COVID cases in your country. So this tool is important for distance learning, for teaching, etc. So these things should be taken into account, at least for our region in the future or in what we're trying to do. Another dimension for equitable access is the geographical disparities. In addition to rural and urban that we produce, perhaps countries should start looking when they are doing or undertaking their ICT surveys to start to capture the geolocation. And this is very important going forward. And the motto of leaving no one left behind is really geographical in nature and can be captured. So the blueprint for our measurement model, it'll be a self-assessment tool that will help countries to quickly understand the current status while preparing their national digital development reports. And this is what we're trying to do now with all the member countries. It will be used, for them to know their level and how to attain a higher level. probably have 4 to 5 levels. We're not sure at the time, and it will identify some target values for KPIs at each level of maturity. We'll definitely attempt to capture economical, social, and cultural aspects of ICT. Perhaps an environmental aspect will be included in future iterations. The core ICT indicators definitely will be at its core. We can't live without the core ICT indicators. But in addition, new indicators and new data sources will be added. This model will serve our member states first, but we hope it will enrich the global measurement efforts. We can share that with anyone interested. And finally, the success of that model depends on the availability of quality and accurate ICT data. There's no question about it. And we're still committed to that as ESCWA, and it's a focus area for us. And that depends definitely on the work of the partnership and all its members, you guys and us included. So thank you so much. I hope I presented it on time, I think.
Yes, that was excellent, and thank you for that excellent summary. I mean, some of the things that you mentioned about the indexes or capturing process over time, those are the issues we also face in the UN government survey, and you also touched upon a little bit about internet governance issues, which, as you know, it's also in the SDG's common agenda, avoiding internet fragmentation or introducing accountability criteria for discrimination or misleading content. This is in the Commitment 7, Improving Digital Cooperation in the UN Secretary General's common agenda. I see that we have 15 minutes left according to official closing. In the meantime, let me also get one or two urgent questions for Mr. Rami Zaatari. I see a hand from the attendees. I'm not sure if this is for Mr. Zaatari. If it is, maybe we can give the floor.
Yes, you can give him the floor. He's a consultant that works with us on related issues.
Yeah,
yes,
please.
I would like to welcome Mr. Iba Waishik.
Yeah, Mr. Iba, please introduce yourself briefly and ask your question.
Hello. I hope that you can hear me well.
Yes, we do. Please go ahead.
My name is Iba Aweshik. I work as a consultant in ICT, and I have been working very closely with ESCWA during the last couple of years, and also nationally in my country, Syria, in the field of ICT. And I have been in touch with the issues of ICT indicators. I would like to stress the importance of the presence of indicators in general and ICT indicators and the impact of ICT in the society for people who are doing research in general. Because whenever you are doing research and trying to provide recommendations, it is important to be able to provide targets. Decision makers and policy makers would like you to provide targets and make analysis, in-depth analysis and studies, and asking you something like how much it is going to cost us to go that path. If we don't have clear indicators, or at least just simply the presence of indicators itself in our region has been a source of difficulty during the last period. I would provide, and especially in the field of digital economy and the relationship between economy and ICT. Traditionally speaking, when it comes to infrastructure and the deployment,
I'm not sure if we lost Mr. Iba Kweshik. I cannot hear him anymore.
It was. I have seen that last year, the last report, they have been using UCLA as a source of information rather than relying on self-declared values by the countries. I don't know if it was out of as an idea of cross-checking or using more reliable data than self-reported data. Don't know really, but it is a welcome way of providing what we believe could be more accurate and more reliable data. We really miss the presence of data of indicators in general. We really need mainly indicators which could define the relationship between the social and economic dimension of the development and the correlation with the ICT. Not only ICT prices, but also the impact on the economy in general, the growth that it could create, and it is in the countries of the region. If you look at the sources of various sources of available data is not always there. It is not always up to date. In most of the cases, it is estimated. It is not based on measurements, but probably proxy indicators. We had to struggle to find some proxy indicators to see how much for example, the Arab countries or the region is using ICT in the field of e-commerce, for example. So we would be very grateful for any initiative which would allow countries in the world in general, in our region in particular, to do their measurements accurately, reliably, and transparently. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kushek, for that intervention. I don't see any hands. Let's go to our last speaker. He was supposed to be the first speaker, but by volunteering, he is now the last. And I hope maybe we can extend the session 5 more minutes. Hatim, the floor is yours.
So I will be fast. So in fact, being the last speaker was our great colleagues have mentioned many of the problems. So I will move directly to our experience in UAE, add 1 or 2 challenges, but also tell our experience how to find solutions. At the beginning, it's part of the DNA of the leadership in UAE to look to be in competitive situation, be in the leading and the international competitiveness report, lead the country to be number 1, as it's well known. This add a lot of pressure into the National Statistics Office. So beyond producing the National Statistics Office, we need to be up to date and provide, as my colleagues just have mentioned, the need for data, the need for number, go beyond even the ICT indicator. Now, to be more focused, if I want to present UAE experience, I will ask you to go to the national portal for UAE and click on the button, say about the UAE. The first word you will find digital UAE. So this is how much it's important, the ICT indicator or the ICT data related to the strategist in UAE. Our first experience to trying to modernize and find solution, we don't have a problem in the survey data. We do have a lot of regularly surveying data, but the challenge was having more up-to-date information. And our first experience was leading our, let's say, statistical business digital transformation. Part of it was to directly look for emerging data sources, go beyond the official statistics requirement, and be ready for the leadership needs for data. Our partner with ITU, was really very fruitful. They are the leaders in the domain of telecommunication operators. It helped us a lot because partnership with private sector, especially with telecommunication operator, was difficult. They facilitated and they fund part of it. And we find it one of the most successful cases for using a big data pilot project to measuring the information society. We produced about 13 or 14 indicators using big data. We have like 2 new indicators. It has like 44 trillion data, and a lot of work have been done. It was also successful producing. So we would love to see more of such pilot projects. That was my question to Martin. And because really it's enrich and enhance the capacity of national statistics to be able to more managing the requirement. So ICT indicator, is it important to the UAE? Yes, massively. It's part of many of the strategy that have been already launched for measuring the technology or for measuring the innovative of the UE Digital Government Strategy 2025, focused totally in its infrastructure and its capacity, and also focused to be data-driven. So this is how much is infrastructure and Vision 2021, more focus in the infrastructure and digitalization. So all this require information. As I mentioned, digital economy now, the requirement for measuring digital economy is also interesting. One more field. So I will mention the job title for Minister of State of Artificial Intelligence, Digital Economy and Remote Work Applications. So this is how important and how dynamic the requirement for data is at UE. Now, one of the solutions or one of the partnership solutions with the private sector is continue to reproduce the same indicator produced earlier. Although now it's became part of the knowledge in UE, and the telecommunication unions, telecommunication operator now have their commercial products that they provided to federal government or local government directly in real time. It gave them insights, information, which add more difficulty to have it as produced in the most of, let's say, the official statistic way of producing statistics, because it always will be later than what they can produce in commercializing. Now, in the region now, part of our looking forward to the future, we have worked closely with the United Nations Global Group for Data Science and Big Data. We continuously bringing knowledge and experience to the region. So as my colleague Martin have mentioned, there is an event will be hosted in Expo January 25-27. Its names as Mobilizing Big Data and Data Science for Sustainability Development Goals. It's more of bringing knowledge from over the borders to Dubai to share it with others in the region, varying from case studies, different case studies from NSOs, Earth observation, mobile phone data, big data, and SDGs. Moving to, there is an event to launch the regional hub. We call it the regional hub for United Nations Regional Hub for Big Data and Data Science, which we hope that will be a place where many of the partners and national statistics in the region can work together, build teams or task teams, as we mentioned in the structure of the team, to build and work together to solve some problems, maybe to do like translation for the manuals, that mean create support and get sponsored and be like an anchor for a real stream of capacity building, either through webinars or bringing case studies, be part of pilot cases. We believe this is very important for national statistics to re-innovate and move faster. ICT is one of the most growing fast domain in the statistics that have a lot of demand in information, have a lot of agility, and became part of our lives. So I don't want to, I'm not sure if I go beyond the time, but there is a lot to say. I will invite everyone to be part of our event in Expo, and maybe we can have more collaboration and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you also. Thank you also for finishing on time. If you could also put the link to the Expo event in the chat, I think that will be valuable for viewers. Now we come to the end of the speakers. I would like to ask organizers if we can go ahead another 5-10 minutes if there are any questions. First of all, to Hatem and also to Rami, either from the other panelists or from the participants.
Yes, sure, you can take 10 minutes more.
Thank you. I give the floor to Martin. Martin, please.
Yes, no, I was on mute. Thank you. I'm asking for the floor because I still owe an answer to the question of Hatem before on the big data and when it will become part of official statistics and kind of why aren't we going any faster with this? It's because it's it's very resource intensive. And actually in your talk, you already highlighted how difficult it was with the operators. So you have to get the cooperation from the mobile phone operators, and that is extremely complicated with the data, with the privacy, with the security. Data can only be accessed on site. It may take months to get the agreements in place and make sure that you don't do anything with the data which goes against all the privacy laws and et cetera, et cetera. This is difficult. This is important, and that requires a lot of time. We're also trying to help with that in coming up with standard templates for standard agreements that can be useful for countries. Then there's a skills issue. It's I'm not going to say it's noise, but there's a lot of noise. It's a lot. It's big data. It's very big, so you need to make sense of it. So all the cleaning, the validation of the data, et cetera, that requires different types of skills than what we traditionally have in the statistical world. So that needs to be developed. That's also why we're developing the handbook, and also we'll put it converted into a training course. So to help people doing all the steps from the beginning until the end. Then there's also the issue, and it was in my slide, but I went very, very briefly over it, in that it will never fully replace official statistics. It can be a complement to it. It can replace some of it. It can make some of it better. Mobile network coverage, for example, can greatly be helped by big data. ICT usage, much more complicated, because we always want to know who the people are. No, the disaggregation by level of education, by gender, by occupation, by location. You can do it with big data, and a lot of that is not available in big data. So we always will need the surveys where we actually ask the people, who are you, so that we know that who is left behind, who is not left behind, and that's going to be much more complicated with big data. So also a resource issue on our side. We now have a full-time data scientist working with us, but he only joined like a few months ago. Before we didn't have that post, so now we can also speed up the work on our side. So lots of reasons why it's not there yet, but we keep on working on it. I cannot help but also making a small comment on what Rami was saying on the IDI. And in general, what Hatem was saying as well, the objective of being the best, or the objective of being one. Now, there's nothing wrong with the objective of doing very well on being number one on whatever, but the IDI was always meant as a tool, not as the end. So the objective, in my opinion, should not be, I want to be number one on the IDI. The objective should be, oh, we want to do very well. Let's look at the IDI and see the areas where we are maybe lagging behind, so we can improve our policies in that perspective, just so that we have better policies and better outcomes. Not that we do better on the index itself as such. That would be an unfortunate side effect, but in my opinion, that should never be the primary purpose. And that's kind of what I heard underneath there. And you may know that we have a bit of problems with the IDI, and for the moment it's on hold. And we will discuss it again at the end of the year at our plenipotentiary conference. But that is just a comment that I would like to add there. I will stop here also in the interest of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Maybe just spell what IDI is for the viewers later.
It's the ICT Development Index. It's an index that we had since 2009, revised a few times, especially in 2017, and then we run into issues with data availability and data quality, and we haven't published it since. And we've had a number of interactions with our member states. And for the moment, the whole IDI is on hold, as I said, and will be discussed at the end of 2022 at our plenipotentiary conference.
Thank you for that clarification. Hatem, I think I saw your hand.
Yes, it can be, as you mentioned, Martin, but again, it's one of the most powerful leadership tools to encourage their, let's say, countries to move forward. It may look, it's not an objective, it's more of a benchmark. It's not a target, but it's more of a motivator. So if we see the history of UAE, it's now finished 50 years old country, but this was really very supportive and encouraging. Coming from this industry of data, this was also fruitful for adding the value and shows the value of data, because at the end you need data to measure such indicator. Transparency, accuracy will have been really measured through different and measure different indicator across.
Thank you. Thank you. We are about to conclude. If there is anyone who would like to take the floor, I'll be happy to give. If not, I'll just try to summarize. The discussion was very rich, and I think we had more conversation, and this tells me like we have to continue the conversation, either through the partnership, mailing list, or meetings like this. And I see that the outcomes or the conclusions from this session is also in line with our report. Obviously, the pandemic affected the ability of countries to conduct data collection, survey-based data collection. And at the same time, like Rami said, the digitalization is in our daily lives, coming up with, forcing us to come up with new indicators such as remote working readiness. I think you mentioned, remote working readiness index. And this shows us the limitations of traditional source of data on ICT statistics. And as mentioned earlier, Martin mentioned, there are resource issues, and we need to find some ways to fund them. And one of the ways is capacity building on the production of ICT statistics. We heard a lot about the manuals, and most of the manuals are listed here in the chat. So I hope people can go later and view them. With that, I would like to thank all the speakers for their time, and then I would like to conclude here. Thank you for following us, and we will be, the partnership will be in touch in other events with you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Under the slogan of shaping our digital future, the Arab International Digital Cooperation and Development Forum, DCDF, will bring together representatives and experts from Arab governments, the business sector, civil society, the technical community, academia, and international organizations. DCDF will be held virtually from 13 to 23 December 2021 by ESCO, LAS, ITU, UNCTAD, and UNDESA. Through almost 30 sessions over 8 days, you can participate in policy debate on priority issues in the fields of internet policies and digital development globally and in the Arab region. DCDF aims to align the Arab tracks of the World Summit on the Information Society and the Internet Governance Forum to maximize opportunities for digital cooperation. Register now to join us in this journey from 13 to 23 December. Together, let's shape our digital future.